This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of
You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for.
I saw this interesting article that came up in my feed yesterday. David Mead and I think it was guitarist he works for, the interview came from, and Guitar World is where I saw this article, and the quote was, "Sometimes the problem with digital sounds is they just lack a little bit of character, and a little bit of what you would think of as an imperfection can make things have character." I thought this was a really interesting point. And then he kind of talked about, this is what I mean when I'm talking about using the best of both worlds, so using the best of digital technology, but then also bringing in some of the characteristics of analog that we love so much. On a lot of the guitars I use that plugin just to give them a little bit more grain and character. So initially I was thinking, like, you're not really bringing the best of both worlds, right? You're using digital gear and then a digital emulation of a plugin. And then I kind of looked closer at what he was talking about, and it's like, well, yeah, what you're doing is trying to bring in more artifacts and emulating like tape stuff, which is not necessarily a super new idea, but I think it's not something I've done a ton of, and I think actually I've been missing out here. In the real world of pedals, there's the Chase Bliss generation loss. I've had one of those. I started making a video with it, and it was kind of just like, well, this is too weird for me. There's also like the Strymon Deco, which is definitely within this vein. There's loads of other stuff, but I wanted to show you some sort of plugins in this video, and also how you can do some of this stuff within Helix Native. So hopefully you'll be along for the ride. But some adding imperfections type thinking and using some of these tools to really add more character to our guitars, I think it is actually a bit of it can make a huge difference to a tone. And I'll show you in this intro some of these more out there tones, which you can grab from my Gumroad folder if you want to. £5 for access to all of these tones, and yeah. So I thought about this in the context of, you know, guitar tones that I'm recording a lot of the time will just be direct in this kind of way that I guess maybe some of you guys are using them as well, if you're using plugins or, you know, neural DSP stuff, anything like that. I think we can kind of get what Stephen Wilson was talking about here, where it's like, well, there's... And he says, you know, basically he likes to add character to those, as if there is something inherent about a digital tone that is lacking in character. Now, there are a few things that we can do just within Helix Native. There are some other things we can do outside of Helix Native that I thought would be worth exploring. Here's one thing that I quite like in Helix, which is basically exactly what he's talking about. This is the ADT. I really like this as a way of getting something out of the middle of the stereo field and to the sides. The ADT is based on a real kind of sort of tape deck, right? Like they would have used in Abbey Road and that sort of stuff. And it's automatic delay, automatic double tracking, which is achieved. I think Jeff Beck might have used this sort of thing. The Beatles. Anyway, sort of a 60s, 70s type thing, where one side you'd have delay. So this has got two tape decks, so delay 1, delay 2, deck 1, deck 2, and you can sort of delay one. Now the other thing you can do is saturate them. So this is kind of the grain and texture sort of thing that he's talking about, where, you know, tape and cassette are often imperfect. So that's just adding like a lot of latency effectively. But in a track in context, particularly, it could be useful. And so saturate for me, I tend to leave down because that's kind of clarity. The wow and flutter for me as well, I leave down, but this is going to add some of those sort of tape artifacts. Generally pretty subtle, the wow and flutter in Helix. But now you're starting to get some of that tape wobble. And now we've got kind of a bit more, maybe, of a characterful, so particularly if it was like production. Something kind of flat and just up the middle, even if I've got ambient effects on it, is now. Infused with some of that tape stuff, and now you can change tape speed. And like I say, the Helix tends to be a little bit more subtle in many of these effects. There are some legacy effects like Tape Eater, which is a bit. A bit more full on, so. So that's one to look at if you're looking for more intense effects. But like I say, we've also got a mod here which we can. So maybe I should save this in my library. Save to library under Eric Lead like tape, and this is what Stephen Wilson was talking about, where it's like, well, what if we recorded this thing to tape a few times, which is kind of like a little bit of an insight what they might do with certain parts in a studio. You know, if you're a legendary producer, recording the same part to tape over and over, specifically for degradation. Something we can do in the Helix fairly simply, and transforming. Another thing that we could use instead would be if you use like a stereo retro reel, which is here. Which is more just one of those, so just one reel instead of two. The saturation stuff, I guess if you're going to use it, you might want to experiment with bringing the volume down. I haven't found a use for that saturation. Let's try like a load of... Like, it could be used, but it's not the sort of thing that I think necessarily is as pretty as just turning that off. Whereas the tying the tape reel just by itself. It's kind of pretty. Now, another thing that I would just shout out here, and Lost Vinyls, these are free, if you can believe it. So if you're using Neural DSP or anything else, you can turn down the noise. So similar sort of vibe, but they also do a vinyl version, which you can check out for free too. So I would say if you're interested in this kind of thing, then these are definitely worth. I think there is something to this, right? This idea. that even if you simulate it in this kind of way, there is something to having sounds that are potentially sort of broken. Again, turn that thing off. Not always going to be appropriate. And equally, you know, there are things that we can... There isn't like a vinyl thing. Yeah, I think it was certainly something that I thought, that's an interesting point that Steve Wilson's made there. So something to consider. I think he shouted out something specifically different, but these are a couple of plugins that I know that work for me. And even within Helix Native, you've got this ADT thing, which I actually use quite a bit of the time. But I thought, yeah, maybe that's a point, something we could try doing to kind of bring our digital sounds back into some sort of analog space somewhat. I thought it was an interesting concept. Catch you in another video soon. If you want to grab this preset, I'll drop it into the Gumroad folder. Eric Lee Tape is going to be the name. Catch you in another video soon. Cheers.